And we are back. And we're going to get into mystery number 16. But first, I wanted to jump in really quickly because I think it's very important. We were speaking about this before we started this particular section. And how important, I mean, with what we're doing with the 28 mysteries, how important is it for us to believe in reincarnation? Because if we don't, and we're trying to do this work, boy, that's going to be difficult. Then also, like, within the Bible itself, wasn't there books of the Bible that were okay with reincarnation and then they were taken out subsequently?
Well, there were, but there's also stuff in the Bible currently that still makes mention of it. We have, the most famous one is when the disciples asked Christ, or Christ asked them, who do you think John the Baptist was? And they said, well, most people say that he was Elijah or Elisha, and then and there's more on that. Even the conversation with Nicodemus, where Jesus says you have to be born again, and Nicodemus is confused and says, well, how can we go into the birth canal and be rebirthed and all this stuff? He's like, no, you have to be born of water and of spirit. But there's other references in the Bible which are elucidated in the mysteries of the redemption, quite a few of them. But the thing that people can understand from this is, if, first of all, in Judaism, reincarnation at that time, and still currently in some sects of Judaism, they believe in reincarnation. And so at Jesus's time, they believed in that. And that's why the apostles, the disciples, were able to say that without, getting a little, what are you saying? If there wasn't, if they were so totally off the mark, it is more likely that Christ would have corrected them for even making mention of it. But people sometimes miss that point, But Jesus was always making sure to correct misperceptions as they came up. But part of that comes from the fact that Jews believed in reincarnation at the time. And so when you talk about how important is it to believe in it, at this stage of the journey, it becomes more important. I know that throughout, when I was writing the Mysteries of the Redemption, I was going back and forth on this area, because I knew I'd take a lot of flack for just going forward with reincarnation at the time. It's not as big a deal now as it was 30 years ago, but and anytime I thought about, well, let's just not talk about it then, I would have another subsequent profound vision where I was shown how reincarnation is inextricably important in the mysteries of the redemption. We can't really understand what's being done and what we're trying to seek out if we don't understand this one little aspect of the mechanics of existence. So it is kind of important. I usually tell people, when you're starting out, it really doesn't matter, because it doesn't. But what obviously will start to happen as a soul enters the purification pathway is, at some point, most souls, it's not all, but most souls will start remembering past incarnations. And they are important usually because there's usually something from those incarnations, especially the ones that are brought to light, brought to our attention, that is directly correlative to why we had to incarnate this time. So ignoring that kind of takes a huge part of the puzzle as to what it is we're here to understand, overcome, and all those things. So you can't really completely separate it out. And I think it's just very important. What does happen too with the understanding of reincarnation is this happens more gradually, and the mysteries are part of that, is that all the separations and all the, you know, the heel digging into the ground about my way or the highway. No, it's my truth is the correct one. This one's right. No, this one's right. Or, you know, anything along racial lines as well becomes completely irrelevant, because we learn that we have experienced, most of us have experienced at least some existences within all kinds of manifestations on the earth, so on every continent, in every race. But we've also experienced, you know, being every different religion around the world. We've experienced being poor, being rich, being somewhere in the middle. And so we find that we really can't classify people or experiences based on their current construct in this time frame, because all that is, it's one little tiny, like, you know, molecule of the experience of the soul. It's one little manifestation, and there are thousands and thousands, if not millions more,
Also,
that
something
are
else.
just as relevant as what they're seeing through right now.
Mhm.
Go ahead, sorry.
So, also, no, thank you. Something occurred to me. Have you like? Oh gosh, it feels much better with my glasses on. I can see.
I can't see anything without mine.
Oh my gosh.
So,
So, have you ever heard of Helen Greaves, the author?
no.
She
Mm-mm.
wrote this book called Testimony of Light. So she was good friends with this nun who had kind of dedicated herself to helping souls and helping people here on earth. But she was also a little bit into metaphysical things. And so they worked together with telepathy. And so they could kind of like speak with each other. But the nun, she died. And by the way, what she planned out for this lifetime, she was nowhere near what she wanted to do before she came here. But Helen Greaves kept the telepathic connection with her on the other side. And so the nun described what was on the other side when she got there. And so she went to this metaphysical hospital. And so there's all these beds. And so people they would die and they would go there and they'd kind of be like, oh, a lot of them didn't know they were dead yet. Or there was
Right,
a lot of
yeah.
things they had to heal. And then also there was all these gradations of light, testimony of light. So as we raise our vibration and such, we go to these different different realms of light. And once in a while, she spoke of somebody from a higher realm would come down into their dimension of light. And it'd just be like, ooh, you know, like, whoa, you know, and that person would, you know, give some teachings or whatever, just the presence of the light. It'd be like, wow, oh my gosh. And also this nun was able to go to higher space once or twice in that book, and where she was able to be among people who were like high philosophy and high spiritual talk. And she was like, wow, this is amazing. But what it occurred to me was that the work that you do with spiritual warfare, where you're going down into these different realms and trying to help bring souls up,
Right.
you know, trying to help them so they can heal and prepare so that they can ascend, and also how that relates to what we just did with the conference in London, the Stairway from Earth to Heaven, where we're talking about all of the ancient sacred texts throughout time, from all the sages, ascetics, the prophets, mystics, and such, because these are people that are ascending to different, and they called it like gradations of light.
Right.
So that's kind of like, we're looking at that and going like, whoa, okay, so we can, because we think of this dimension, we speak about the universal spheres of dimensions, right? Where one is very dark and evil, and then second is mostly evil. But then
Yeah.
you get to like the third and fourth dimensions that we're in, and then fifth and higher out into infinity. Of course, there's infinity in the third and fourth mortal realms, and the first and second too, which is like goes on forever. But we tend to think in this third, fourth dimension that this is it. Like here we are, and then there's separately from this is the fourth, fifth dimension and up, and down below is the second, and we're here. But the thing is, it's not set in stone. We're not just here, and we're separate from anything. And so in that case, like what we are doing right here, what you're doing, you're being an agent, so to speak, in this realm. And we might feel like, as I just said, everything's separate, but it's not.
No, it's not. It's not. And that's a very interesting story, and is very reminiscent as well of the writings of Francisco Candido Javier on the journey afterlife of Andre Luis. He has a 12-book series on that. Starts out with Nasolar, which they made a movie of called Astral City. And he has 12 books that are in that series. He's written a ton of books. He passed away in 2002, but he was a very prolific mystic, and his specialty was laying out this afterlife configuration. And frankly, I would say he's probably one of the best writers to read if you really want to understand what reincarnation is and how it functions, the mechanics of it in this realm and in the afterlife realms, because that is really one of his definite focuses in the works that he was given when he was alive. And it is absolutely, and it's very good too that you pointed out that, this woman was a nun, and then she realizes she didn't actually accomplish very much of what she had set out. And that's, that's a common story for all of us. It's really, it's a sad truth, but many of us miss out on a big portion of what we were sent here to do. I've been working on the second installment of Dialogues with a Mystic. It'll be this Dialogues 2. And there's a lot in there about Seeker's journey and the different distractions, starting with the most common, which was the vices that we have, and lust, but then going into the other ways that we distract ourselves, but yet we do things that make us feel like we're doing something useful or meaningful in order to, kind of give ourselves permission not to do the real work of this earthly incarnation. And we all struggle with it. I struggle with it all the time too. I would rather go out and play in my garden, but and there's all kinds of things I can tell myself about why cultivating my plants is much more important than doing the actual work of the soul at times, and of course there's nothing wrong with those things that we love to do, but it's all about balance. And so yeah, it is one of the biggest, I'd say it's one of the biggest delusions that we have in the earthly life, is that we do not do the real work of our presence here a good most of the time. And so we end up wasting a lot of time. And it's really important. So, even going back to understanding reincarnation, it becomes important in that sense, because if we want to completely ignore that aspect of it, then we don't see, okay, we're cycling, going round and round, coming back. Why is it that we're doing that? Why are we not reaching the fruition? Because the writings of the ancient sacred texts are written by souls who have figured it out, and this is their last incarnation here in this mortal realm. Some of them might be even here on a voluntary mission, but at worst case scenario, they are on their last incarnation here, and those ancient sacred texts are the words they left behind of the secrets they discovered before they ascended into these higher and higher spheres.
And that's why I kind of brought that up, because with the Helen Greaves testimony of light, where they're moving on to different stages, these souls, and they're showing us the groundwork of how they did it, and how we can move on and evolve as souls.
Exactly.
I thought that was so important. And it also made me think of a story that when you went to visit somebody who was on the moon,
Yes.
and they were there, and they thought there was no way to get out of that dimension and that place that they were.
That
And you're
was a
like,
chaos realm, for
it was a
people
chaos
watching.
realm.
It was a chaos realm, and there are both purgatories and hells that are chaos realms. And this was a purgatory. It was I think it might have been well, whatever. It was a chaos realm. I
And
can't
we're in a
remember.
purgatorial realm.
Yes, we are as well. Yes.
And so there was a doorway for that person, and you're like, come on, let's go. And he's like, there's no doorway.
Yeah.
Impossible to get out of here. And so he didn't believe he could, and so there he stayed, and you took off to go assist others and such.
Right.
So
And one of the points about those, though, too, is that, and this relates to each of us, because so before I left, I made sure that he knew how to get out of that realm once he realized, oh, maybe I should have at least given it a try. So he knew where to go, where to find his way out. But see, this happens to all of us. I turned that off. I do not understand
I know,
why
I
this keeps
remember.
happening. I know we did this intentionally.
Yeah.
So, but this happens to each of us
But that call
at
wasn't
all
from
times.
God, was it?
No,
Oh,
I checked
okay.
the number just to
Okay.
make sure. But we all receive these hints and these messages, and think about how many, because I can think of millions of them that I myself ignore, even though I'm supposed to be so much more acutely aware of them, but I can see how many millions of times in my life I miss what seems to be an obvious message, but maybe a year or two later I'm like, how did I not see that? I was supposed to do this. And then then we hopefully do it, and whatever it is that we're being prompted to do. But many of us will receive these guidances in subtle ways and maybe not pay much attention, and then we stand still, and we don't move forward, we don't progress, we don't accomplish the actual objectives of the incarnation, because we're oftentimes we might just be enjoying life, just doing the things we want to do or whatever. And this is partly too where we get into so many different aspects of this, because there's nothing wrong with enjoying life, but there's also work that we are to accomplish while we're here. And so it's all about balance. So these distractions, you can have them to the point where they will completely prevent you from doing anything of the actual work of this life. Or you may have some things that you enjoy in your life, but you find a way to put them in a balanced state so that the work of this life is not being ignored. It's a difficult thing for all of us, So
To me, it doesn't seem like there's much difference between you going to that chaos realm and trying to help that soul to
right.
move on than to what you're doing here in this mortal realm, where you've been guided to give these keys, these maps, this information to assist us mortal beings to move on and to grow and to evolve.
It's exactly right. And and it's also, there's no difference as well between, like, for instance, the angelic teachers and guardians who come and teach me. So they're descending from a higher sphere to teach me. So they are condescending to do this for me to benefit. And one of the universal things I'm always talking about is that creation requires us to give back to creation. So whatever we receive. And so if we wish to receive more, we have to also give more. So yeah, these things definitely happen absolutely in the afterlife, but they happen here as well in the mystical experience. And when we seek the out-of-body experience And then especially as we're moving into and through the mysteries, we are receiving that being from the higher sphere, many different beings, because there are many different beings who are entrusted with different knowledges that we have to embody from them. And so they're bringing their energy down to us as well.
So the 16th mystery is initiations into the mysteries of the ark, which I thought this
Yes.
was really interesting. To fix our heart on God and cease all doing, thinking, and being. And then he spoke of Noah's ark as the key to crossing the ages and is linked to reincarnation.
It is. Yeah. Yes, it is. This was one of these many of the experiences that I had about reincarnation where I was shown, and I'm not going to be able to put it in words, but I was shown the mysteries of our existences and how they move through space, time, and vibration. And, you know, so in this mystery is, I mean, even another way to put it is be still and know that I am God. You know, cease all doing, thinking, being, and fix our heart on God. You know, that is ironically, and the more you move through the initiations, the more you're going to see these little things that have become some even cultural things or little sayings like be still and know that I am God. That is something that has been seeded into our realm as this great truth, you know, and it's actually one of the mysteries, you know. So we have to, which is hard for us as humans because we are so distracted and we have all these things that we like. And of course, God created this beautiful world for us. So we all, you know, and we, you know, what we often do is we actually make ourselves feel important or feel like we're doing important things by just coming up with things to do. You know, that's one of our distractions, you know. And so you know, so the actual procedure of ceasing, just ceasing, doing, thinking, being, and literally fixing your heart on God, that's an actual energetic shift. That's an alteration point in the soul.
You
And it
spoke of,
completely, go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. You spoke
It,
of,
it,
sorry, you go.
well,
Please.
it just alters the way that we perceive. You know, what happens in all out of body experience, but also in all spiritual progress, is that these little adjustments, it's like tuning up the engine of a car. It alters the way that engine runs. And so when you make this slight alteration, it seems slight, but it's catastrophic actually in its energetic importance. And so it literally shifts the way that you perceive. So the way that you're going to see things completely changes from that. And that's what people can often miss until they've actually done this. And this is something that we will do with assistance from above, from beings from higher spheres, because it's an energetic alteration that has to come upon us as much as we have to draw it in by practicing these things.
With your counseling, your spiritual counseling, and the mystical processes of the soul reincarnating into other lifetimes, you spoke of interlocking triangles and their individual grids interconnecting. Is that something that a lot of your counseling students will have similar experiences with?
Yeah, they'll have those. This, with those triangles, you know, one of the things that I was shown, I'm going to put this down here, was this triangle of existence. So let's look at the triangle. And this is, I think, outlined in the Mysteries of the Redemption as well. But it's the karmic triangle. So the top point of the triangle is God. And you see that that top point is also one. When the triangle widens out to the base, and this is the grid, put the lines in there and all the cross points. Those are all of our existences, all of our lifetimes, all of our points of perception. And so this karmic triangle, we are moving up that karmic triangle where we are trying to come from this little point down here of our minuscule awareness in this lifetime, this little tiny point at the bottom of the triangle, and we are moving up towards one, which is that culmination of the understanding and the knowledge that comes from bringing back the memory of all of that existence. And as you're going through the mysteries, you're not just going to culminate in the oneness of understanding your own existences. You will also be moving into this higher construct, which is the mind of God, which allows you to then become capable of experiencing and perceiving through all eyes of creation. This is an energetic thing. It's a mystical thing. It's not something you can just will into happening. It's something that God brings down upon you. These beings from these higher spheres bring down to you and help you to take these stair steps up through that multiplicity, which is the base of the triangle. The multiplicity is everything. The point that we are seeking is the point of one, where all knowledge is present in this one pointed awareness. And so the interlocking of the triangles is, again, and you know, everything in relation to the initiations and the mysteries and rites of passage that we're talking about, there is a huge portion of it, I would say at least 90%, if not more, that is completely energetic and vibration. And so the little things that I may throw out there in terms of the visual of what we might see is just a little tiny part of that mystery. That energetic shift that occurs is the actual thrust of the individual rites. The interlocking triangles, though, going back to it, it is representative of a few things. One is the constant interlocking of these, because let's say every person has a karmic triangle that is associated with them. The interlocking triangles show us how our myriad of existences interlock and interact with all these other existences, all of these other souls, all of these other soul groups, soul grids, and all this stuff. And it's almost like a Rubik's cube. And you know how the Rubik's, you're just like moving it around. So if you understand this karmic triangle and you see all the lines in it, all the grids, and then you see how these interlocking triangles will have all these different contact points. So they're interlocking, but their contact points will be specific in each of these multiplicities. They will be on a particular, this part of this one, and this part of this one, and this part of this one, and this part. But when you're experiencing this initiation, you understand it all in the context. You know, this kind of takes me back again, even though this happened many years later, but I think it's kind of a relevant point to throw in with this particular mystery. When I was taken into the throne room of God, I apologize, got the throat. To see God moving through millions and billions of existences throughout all the universe, all at the same time. And he was making alterations in all of these lives, all of these existences, all of these life forms, and it was all simultaneous. It was mind-boggling. There's a little bit of that. I mean, because literally this is like decades before this particular rite, where you are seeing this beautiful perfection in the grids and the triangles interlocking and uh, the connection between them all and how they all work together. And it's all happening in a way that is beyond our ability to really comprehend or definitely to put into words. But when you are given to experience it, it all makes sense. You're like, oh. And a lot of people will talk about this who've had near-death experiences when they go into that universal mind of God, and they understand things all of a sudden. But then, most of us cannot come back and just explain what we understood. We just knew it all made sense. We understood for a moment through the eyes of God. And that's what this rite is doing. We're understanding the mystery of reincarnation through the eyes of God and how it all interlocks and works. And so, even going back to the original question that you had, this is why, and this is also what was repeated to me over the years when I was like, I really don't want to have to be controversial. I'm not really into that, but you can't take it out of the mystery of the redemption, even though, and of course we know, and I talked about it in the mysteries of the redemption, how reincarnation was taken out of the mystery of the redemption by the church at the Council of Nicaea by a vote of 1, but before the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, reincarnation was something that many of the sects believed in, but they voted it out. And so, you can ponder on that, but you can't really take it out. And even, I'm going to take you back to a few other experiences that I wrote about, where Christ came to me shackled. His arms and legs were shackled. And I'm not going to remember the exact words. The exact words are in the Mysteries of the Redemption, where I was told it was my purpose to remove the shackles that Christianity had placed upon Christ. And I say that with all respect to Christianity because I'm a Catholic myself. But what the message of that was, is here you have human beings on the ground making decisions about doctrinal matters, making decisions about mystical matters that are not something you cannot codify the spirit. We talk a lot about, well, what is the one unforgivable sin that Christ talked about in the New Testament? And many people, and mystics in particular, will say that that unforgivable sin is impeding the action of the Holy Spirit. And so when we try to put God in a box, and we can do that, and I love theology. I read it all. I've studied it all, and I continue to because I love it. It's a very important part. But when we try to literally take the Spirit of God and codify it according to our grounded perceptions on the ground, you will take out the Spirit by doing that, because you cannot go in and remove the action of the Spirit in any given time or age or on any given soul. So if you do, you take the risk of literally stalling the redemption and stalling purification and stalling progress in this realm. And so you cannot encapsulate the Spirit. It's not something you can throw in a structure of rules and laws and say, this is how it is all the time. This is why we talk about energetic truth and how we learn about that from the very beginning as mystics, that the energetic truth determines the validity of an action or interaction, not some man-made rule or law. And the energetic truth is how things are through God's eyes, based on everything that is taken into account. So you can't just say, no, this is always wrong. And well, sometimes there are some things that are always wrong or always pushing backwards. But there are also processes and procedures which are just the way energy moves and how evolution moves, that you cannot codify and without interfering in this redemption of the soul. Going back to, I think we've talked about Vimalakirti before.
Sure.
And how Vimalakirti, one of his quotes was that you cannot seek you cannot seek the truth unless you go out into the ocean of passions. And this is one of the things a lot of mystics will say, that people do not actually cultivate their souls unless they've actually had the courage to walk out and experience. And so being willing to be courageous enough to experience usually indicates you're going to screw up. So we don't want to encourage people to be afraid to live, to act, to move, because this is partly how the spirit moves through us and brings us into those redemptions that occur at all these junctions and rites. But in terms of this particular one, the 16th we're talking about, we're understanding these multiplicities and how they all work together.
So to me, there's a sacred geometry.
There is.
Like a true sacred geometry, a flower of life where everything's included. And so there's also a relationship that you spoke of in this chapter between the Ark of the Covenant and the pyramids, about the realization of reincarnation and achieving purgation. So I wonder if you could talk about that.
Well,
so
I think that's going to be one of those things that I'm going to leave for the experiencer to experience in spirit, because that is one of those things that is beyond words.